Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Time Extend. I'm one of your hosts, Adam Ismail, and unfortunately my partner in crime, Brendan Morrison, could not be here today. Something came up, but it's all going to be good because we have a fantastic guest for this show. He's a musician, he's an artist, he just came out with a new album, a tribute to Ridge Racer Type 4, called Real Racing Roots 2019, and his name is Andrew Elmore. Andrew, so glad to have you on the show. How are you doing tonight?
Thanks. I'm half asleep, but extremely excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited to have you here. I guess just to set up the background of how this amazing union happened. It's really funny because I caught wind of Real Racing Roots 2019 right when Brenda and I were in the middle of recording the Ridge Racer episodes that we did at the end of last year.
Oh, no.
So, well, no, it was perfect because we had just done the first one, and then somebody brought to our attention, and as soon as I saw, the cover art, I knew. I was like, okay, this guy gets R4. This is the real deal. And I knew that
this guy has a JogCon.
Exactly, yeah. Well, actually, I didn't even know that was a picture of a JogCon, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, I was like, this is gonna be good, and I was really excited to listen to the album. And I think it was a week or two before it came out. So then it comes out, and I listened to it on Spotify, and yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. You've done an amazing job, man. And yeah, Brendan.
Thank you.
Of course, Brendan and I looked at each other and we're just like, we have to have him on the show. Brendan's, I'm sure, kicking himself that he's not here, but I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for that again in the future. So yeah, that's how we got to this point, and could not be more thrilled to have you here. And I'm gonna pick your brain about all kinds of R4 musical questions. So hope you don't mind.
Bring it on. Let's do it. It's the single best topic.
Yeah, it's I have this theory that everyone who has played R4, it just it's one of those experiences that sticks with you. And I don't want this to just be about that game, because I'm sure we have some listeners who are you guys just had 2 straight episodes on Ridge Racer. Do we really have to go back and talk about Ridge Racer?
What if we
had 3? Yeah, exactly. So I know people can get sick of the topic, but you're here, so frankly I don't care, because this is way more exciting.
We've already stepped in it.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, we have to see it through. So yeah, I suppose before we got into the whole album discussion and Ridge Racer specifically, you're on Time Extend, and we are a podcast that is just all about racing games, all kinds of racing games, and I'm curious as to how you end up making an R4 album, but all the way in the beginning, what aspect of racing games, how did you start playing them? Maybe what was a formative racing game that you played? What is the birth of Andrew, the racing game musician score guy?
Nailed it. Yeah, no, that's a weird one, because I was thinking about this earlier, and I wish I had some kind of flashpoint I could point to of the moment where it all came together, or something like that. But I don't.
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the quick summary is just I've always played games in general, and I've always really enjoyed all kinds of different racing games. And it wasn't really until the past few years when suddenly I was consciously aware of oh, I like these a lot, huh? I didn't thought of it as a genre that I was actively a fan of, despite playing a bunch of them all the time. And I think part of that might have been to do with kind of what I grew up with, because my first my primary console growing up, and this is going to betray my youth a little bit, was an N64, which is not a console with a strong library in general, especially racing games.
Yeah, we've talked about that before on this show a bunch of times. It's funny because the N64 actually has a good chunk of the kinds of racing games you don't find anywhere else because they're on the N64. But it's not.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's just compared to the PlayStation, and really the PlayStation was dominated by racing games, and it's just underrepresented on the N64 for sure.
definitely. And from there, we moved on to an Xbox, which does have a ton of really, really good racing games, but just none that I was aware of really during its time, except for we got it at the end of '02, which came with Jet Set Radio Future and Sega GT 2002, that combo disc, and Jet Set Radio Future is something that I still carry deep in my DNA. Whereas Sega GT 2002 is a thing that I tried a couple of times and was like, all right, this is kind of cool.
You know what? I mean, this is honestly almost as much a Sega podcast as it is a racing game podcast. So I totally respect the shout out to JSRF. And it's criminal that we never got any sort of remaster or anything of that game, because
I know
I'd love to revisit it in a way that's convenient, doesn't require me to dig up component cables and find my Xbox, which barely works and has a broken disk drive, but that's another story.
Woo! Yeah, that's the problem with that game, is it's trapped on a dying console. Like 100% of Xboxes are failing. That clock capacitor will leak and destroy the motherboard if you don't go in there and yank it out, or if you're really unlucky with the model number, replace it. Hint, hint, wink, wink, podcast listening audience, go do some quick surgery on your Xboxes. But racing game.
Right. I was going to say, I'm lucky enough that I had that recall back in the day where it was like the AC adapter would like spontaneously combust. So I have the newer one that apparently I'm told does not do that. So I guess that's good.
Okay, that's whatever it's worth. That is the first I've heard. My understanding was that all of them were a ticking time bomb, but I desperately hope that you are correct, because that would bum me out if that happened.
I mean, we'll find out one day. Fortunately, I never play it because
one day we're going to pull that thing out and it's going to be right or wrong. So
yeah, it's funny. I do go back every now and then and play, some games from that era on the Xbox, and it's funny you mentioned Sega GT 2002, because it's the perfect example of a game that at the time I thought was incredible, and then within like 2 years I was like over it, kind of forgot about it, and
for sure. And then sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think that's where history should leave it. It was okay for the time, and then once Microsoft finally got on there, I don't know, horse. I don't know where I was going with that analogy. Once they figured out how to make a racing game that can compete with Gran Turismo, we had Forza, and that was it. So
yeah, and I played a little bit of that first Forza, and I played a lot of Forza 2 for whatever reason. But like I totally missed PGR and like Rally Sport Challenge, which is incredible. And a lot of stuff until later. Like, don't get me wrong, I filled those holes. I went back and I dealt with that. Like, there is a wall next to me with all of that stuff on a dumb shelf, because I'm the type of idiot that leaves all those consoles plugged in all the time and ready to go.
I envy that. I wish I could do that. I have to kind of swap them out, and I've also moved like 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years, and I'm about to do it again. So,
me too. I'm just an idiot. Just keep doing this to myself, hauling CRTs from apartment to apartment.
Oh man,
don't be like me, kids. Learn from my mistakes.
That is the life. It's a very expensive life, but it's a life I want to have.
It's a life that's bad for your spine and like square footage in your apartment. But no, so if I go back and think about the racing games in particular that I spent the most time with and got the most into kind of in their day, a couple of the bigger ones that stand out, specifically Wipeout Pure on the PSP.
Yeah, that's good.
It's so good. And somehow, as dumb as this is to admit, that was my introduction to Wipeout.
So that's fine. That was my introduction to Wipeout.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went back and then played the older ones after that, and that introduced me to like the Designers Republic and Ian Anderson, and kind of shaped my career path from there.
Yeah.
So like a significant portion of why I'm a designer now is because I played a lot of Wipeout. So, whoops.
Yeah, tremendously like influential. As soon as I started with Wipeout Pure as well on the PSP, and kind of went back in subsequent years and played the series through the ages. And after after 3 was the last one that TDR worked on, and you can definitely tell after that point that they were able to recapture some of the magic with Pure, but Fusion was rough, and you could tell, and it did not have the love of the Designers Republic on it. And I don't think it's a mere coincidence that you get games like R4 and Wipeout 3 in the same year that are so incredibly like just way beyond the sort of, I don't even know what you call it, but just like they were operating on their plane artistically compared to a lot of games. And I'm sure there were others in the non-racing spectrum, other genres that also also kind of fit that mold, but like it just seems like that 99, 2000, like, and yeah, you could even throw like Jet Set Radio in there too, just like something was in the water, just around the world. People were on something, and it was good.
Yeah, there was a weird kind of like, I don't know, like optimistic sense of futurism around like that Y2K sort of design era.
Yeah.
That at least in the States, that dropped off a cliff after 9/11.
Yeah.
Is that first for 9/11 ref on Time Extend? Did I just destroy this whole podcast?
Yeah, anyway, you know what? I think it is. Well, I mean, that's what happens when one of us is from Scotland. So,
I'm sorry, Brent. I've taken your throne and I've ruined it.
This is now America the podcast. We've changed focus.
Oh no, God help us all.
Anyway.
Oh no. And some of my earliest memories of games, period, are from, and I think this is going to tie in a bit more directly, but the original Ridge Racer on my cousin's PlayStation. And I was super young, but there's something about that first game specifically, but I think you could also apply that to Revolution and Rage Racer to an extent, where like there's something about the like physicality of the space in that world, and I think that might be because you're driving around the same track over and over.
You get to know it really well.
You really do, and I think it like builds up this weird, like almost like a much less creepy version of Stockholm Syndrome or something, where just like I have this fascination with that little world that they built, that they modeled for that track, and like if I could step inside any game and walk around in it for a while, like the first thing that I would want to do is go walk around the different track variants of the original Ridge Racer. The big turn that's going through the tunnel with all the like kind of those big rectangular slats on the left wall.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a tunnel exactly like that by where I live, and every time I drive through it, I just start hearing extremely obnoxious, loud, happy hardcore music in my head.
I'm so sorry.
Perfect.
Well, Brent loves that stuff. I can't stand it. That's the one area that we deviate.
I secretly do too.
Yeah,
I secretly also love it.
Can't.
It's just what's the song that he referenced the other day that drives
he loves
insane?
Rotterdam Nation.
Rotterdam Nation.
He's crazy about. Yeah.
Yes. That song is the best worst thing, and I love it. It's terrible.
There's some great songs on that soundtrack. Like I love Rhythm Shift. That's a fantastic song, but that one's also like I think probably the least happy hardcore, and that's why I like it. So
that's fair.
But yeah, so you mentioned the world building, and it's something that we touched on in the Ridge Racer podcast, and I've written so many random articles over the years for GT Planet on my own blog about racing games, where I just try to explain that like. And I don't know if I've ever been able to do it justice, but just like there's something about these games, when they make you go through the same portion of track over and over again, and you're playing Rage Racer, for example, and you drive under their fake version of the Arc de Triomphe, and you take that right turn through a village, and you get to see what that's like, and then you go down the road a little bit, and there's that tunnel, and the tunnel branches off 3 ways, and you get to know this is where this is a world that leads from this tunnel, and this is kind of the way that through repeated exposure you get to paint the world in your head. And I don't know, just on some level that I've never felt like I could properly just like capture, it just makes me feel like it just makes me feel like there's so much more going on. I don't know. It just like, it raises the stakes just to know that this is a fleshed out world, that this is a place where so many different things are happening beyond what even I can see. There are portions of the road, portions of the track, portions of the city that like are beyond my limits, but they exist and they're real. And I would just wonder about what that would be like. And what if they even built out the world further? And then that's how I end up like drawing tracks and stuff as a little kid in my free time to try and imagine where that road goes, you know? And yeah, that's something that I always loved about Ridge Racer, about, you know, Sega's arcade racers, about that whole time period where it's like definitely a problem of like they kept reusing the same sections of track to aid in development. Clearly, like that's the only reason they did this. But it works for me. Like, I just find it so much more interesting.
And like, in terms of like getting that feeling of the like more broadness of the world around you, like in Revolution, you're going through different like biomes, and the sun is like rising and setting. You're going through entire like day-night cycles, especially depending on the length of the race. But like even in the first one, when you just immediately like you pass under that initial underpass at the starting line, and then like you just drive into this like harshly lit tunnel underneath a gigantic skyscraper that's like got Galaga playing on a jumbotron on the front of it. Like something about that just like was really weirdly a formative memory for me that like still captures my attention in the same way now, which is weird. But
yeah, for me it's and something that I meant to make a point to mention the second Ridge Racer podcast where we talked about Rage Racer, but I forgot to. The rise up after you go through that village section, up through before you get to a tunnel, when you're making that turn up the crest and you see the waterfall, like that image will forever be burned into my mind. And just like as a child playing that game, going around that corner and seeing a waterfall and just going, oh my god, like this is crazy, you know. And
that's literally the first image that comes to mind anytime I think of Rage Racer.
Absolutely, and it's a beautiful image, and it's the type of thing too that you know, I feel like when you are designing 2 or 3 tracks, you can put so much more effort into those tracks and really try to make them feel special, and they totally did with that game and with all these games.
Yeah, even if you took out all of the like character and texture and like art around it and just like took the actual flat track itself, like still fun as hell to drive.
Oh, absolutely.
But the amount of character they were able to imbue into that world with just the like, you know, super low res PS1 polygons and just art direction all around it is just fantastic and just weirdly, I don't know, there's something about it that just like draws you in really hard, and I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only person that felt that way, because it seemed odd to me.
Oh yeah, you're definitely not the only person who feels that way. I can tell you that much. There are at least 3 of us.
There are dozens of us. And I think part of that is how you end up with the world of something like in Ridge Racer 5, where like all of the tracks and routes and stuff are kind of overlaid on top of each other throughout Ridge City.
Yeah, Ridge Racer 5 takes that concept to the next level.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people at the time looked at it like it was kind of like, by that point it was like, games don't have to do this anymore. This is the next generation, and it feels kind of weak that we have to drive the same portion of Seaside Route 765 over and over again in every one of these tracks. But, I mean, I was there for it, and Ridge Racer 5 is a great game, so...
Yeah, was it you that mentioned the like Prima guy that overlaid all those on top of each other so you could like see the map of the city?
Yep.
I literally ordered that on eBay while I was listening to that episode, and it came in a few days later, and I just spent like 20 minutes just staring at those maps like an idiot.
It's such a fantastic guide, because I used to like...
so good.
I used to take a piece of paper and trace over the tracks and then like create more tracks based on those tracks.
How else could I staple these building blocks together? Which is, it feels like that's what they did, especially when you get to like the PSP release, or I guess releases, but being in the States, I can only speak to the first one. Damn it. But it's very much just like we took all these like corners and sections from like Heaven and Hell and R4 and we stapled it into 765 or whatever, and just like I don't know. I've been playing through that game like this last couple weeks on PSP, and like that's such a weird delight when you start a new tour and just play like what appears to be a new track, and it's just like, oh, I recognize all of these things separately, and I feel like there's something in me that should be like, this is cheap. They're just recycling old stuff, but like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. B, like, I don't know. They're just doing really cool stuff with like elements that I'm already familiar with. We've probably gone too long on this, but I don't know. I think that stuff's really cool.
It's, this is just inevitable anytime, like, especially Ridge Racer. There's so much to talk about because the series has changed so much,
and also not at all in some ways.
Yeah, and also not at all, and also like now it's like, change is proof that you're living, and right now that series is anything but alive.
No, I told you, I'm trying to will it into existence. It'll happen.
Well, that's actually what I was going to ask you about 2019, but
yeah.
So that is all awesome. So the one last thing I'll ask you about your history then specifically is when did you play R4, and why was that, like, how did that strike you? Because I imagine you devoted a good portion of your life to making an album about it, so I have to imagine that it kind of hit you strongly to some degree.
Yeah, that record took about a year, off and on. It's kind of I don't know. We can get to the how and why later, but like as for how I came to R4, that is a weird question because like my history with Ridge Racer in general is really, really minimal. It was playing that first one a bunch at my cousin's house in the like mid 90s on the PS1, and then kind of nothing for a very, very long time. I'm trying to figure out how I ended up falling all the way into that series because it was just a few years ago. Weirdly enough, like I didn't play 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or any of the weird like spin-offs or anything like that.
You don't need to go past 5. Our list proves you don't need to go past 5. It only goes.
I like 7 a lot. Damn it! I will defend that game. It's not.
Well, you know what? 7 is fine, and there is a great Ridge Racer 7 rescore on your record, so that has lifted my opinion of the game.
We can get to that too, because that started as a. You know what? No, we're here already. I'll just get that out of the way.
We keep jumping around so much. Go for it, man.
Look, is this a podcast about trains or cars? We're not on rails, man. It
was about horses at one point.
Look, the times change. We're going full anti-gravity racing league here by next month. No, so I was thinking a lot about R4, as you do, as I am most of the time, and about how desperately I want that series to come back in any capacity. And I was like trying to think about like idealistically what would I want a Ridge Racer 8 to be, and then like realistically what would I think it would be. And more recently, stuff like Ace Combat 7 has kind of given me hope that maybe if Ridge Racer does come back, that it would be like potentially done with the love and care that it needs, which gives me hope. Just a spark. Look, I gotta hold on to whatever I can here.
We all do.
Yes, and I was trying to think about like, because like the musical style in those games has changed noticeably, kind of with every entry. But also like there are certain elements obviously that have stayed alive throughout, but that identity has kind of shifted, and so is the style overall. It's not just the music; it's like the way they animate the menus and the like color palette and art direction, and whether it's Reiko or Aya or whatever. But long story short, I was like, okay, what would music look like in a Ridge Racer 8? And I was like, I bet they would probably do some weird like liquid drum and bass thing. So that's what that started out as. It was me being like, what would that actually sound like? So I sampled an old like choral recording of my wife singing out like a demo track, and then just started throwing drums under it and doing weird stuff. And at the time, a different game audio composer named Megan Carnes has kind of started this thing called Rescore Wednesdays, where a lot of indie game composers and game audio people on Twitter were just kind of rescoring a game every week, kind of in spring, summer of last year. And so while I was working on that Ridge Racer 8 theoretical music thing, I was like, I'm just gonna find some good footage of a like urban nighttime level in R7 and throw that in there because it still kind of fits the vibe. I think it's definitely different, a bit more modern in some ways and a bit too old in some other ways. But that's how that came together. So I did like, I don't know, 20 or something of those rescores for different games, and that one felt like it would be a fun little like bonus track on the record because it was still Ridge Racer related. And also one of those tracks was the same thing but for Ridge Racer Revolution.
Oh.
But after I tracked that out, I was like, this doesn't feel like there's not enough like weird esoteric sampling and like goofy electronic sounds in this. It's mostly just like really cheesy old roll and slap bass. It's like, it's not quite R4, but it's more R4 than R2. So it ended up on there anyway. Whoops.
Yeah, the Ridge Racer 7 rescore is one of my favorite tracks on the record because it
might secretly be the only good track on the record.
I mean, that's definitely not true, but no, it's interesting how you get to that point, and it's like this feels more current, this feels more modern, but it still feels like Ridge Racer. Because I listened to most of 29. I really want to get into me talking about what I think yet, but
we're gonna do a live critique right here on the show. Just
no, it's not all critique. I just like. I don't know. I have thoughts. They're all good. I just have thoughts. But we're going to save those for a little bit later. This record, Real Racing Roots 2019, it's been out, it came out right before New Year, correct?
Somewhere around there. I don't remember. December something.
Yeah. So it's been out for a little while. How's the response been? Because I have to imagine there are a lot of, Ridge Racer fans who are hungry for content, especially like R4 content, right?
Yeah, and I definitely, I get the feeling that, there are, 50 Ridge Racer fans, but all of those Ridge Racer fans are Ridge Racer 4 fans.
Yeah.
If there were more of us, it might have been, I could see people, I could see there being a backlash against R4 for being, a meme or whatever, just because everyone loves it so much, but I don't think there's enough, chatter out there about this series because it's been dormant for so long. But it seems to be a generally kind of agreed upon, this was sort of the, creative mechanical peak of the series, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's fair.
But yeah, the response has been incredible. It freaked me out. I thought that I might get, a few pity likes from, people that I knew already or whatever. So when I posted that little announcement video, and all of a sudden a lot of people that I've followed and looked up to for a long time were liking or retweeting or talking about it or talking to me about it, I was freaking out. The fact that we're here talking about it right now is still freaking me out. It didn't make money or anything, so that's fine, but the fact that anyone was interested at all blew my mind and exploded my heart and is wonderful.
Of course. I mean, I think it says something that I grew up with this series, and you played R4 later on. There is clearly a timelessness though.
Oh yeah,
to the series and to that entry specifically that inspires people. that proves that it's not something that is easily forgotten. It's something that's very influential. And I think, I think it's safe to say, based on that response, you captured that spirit. And I think, Ridge Racer fans everywhere probably really, really thankful that you worked on this record and are super happy it exists, because I'd love to see more stuff like it. Especially at a time when like the racing genre is kind of in this place where I feel like they're less, at least big budget racing games aren't really a thing anymore unless you have Microsoft or Sony money. So R4
You're
kind
definitely
of
not seeing super like artsy and weird.
Right.
They
we're
not
can't
getting
take
any
chances.
Automodelistas anytime soon.
Yeah, they just don't. The market isn't there to take chances. So
yeah,
I think,
that's the thing. It's not that they're refusing to. I think it's just like it's not worth the risk because the people aren't there to buy it necessarily, or at least it hasn't been proven if they are or not in a very long time. Yeah. So like I understand, I can't be upset about it, but also I'm bummed out about it.
Well, people, we all have our imaginations or what ifs. What if there was a Ridge Racer Type A or something like that? And that listening to your record definitely like got that active in me, which is, I guess, what I was trying to say before.
Sorry,
like,
didn't mean to play with your emotions like that.
No, it's awesome. It's like when you have a really good dream, but the at least your dream, like when I listen to that album, like it lasts for like an hour or whatever, and I don't forget it after I wake up, so that's good. But anyway, so when before I listened to it for the first time, I really had no idea what to expect, because for all the reasons that we've discussed, R4, first of all, it's like my favorite soundtrack ever in any video game. That goes without saying.
That's a valid claim.
Yeah, and it is so in a way that no other game approaches except maybe Wipeout 3, but I think it even goes beyond Wipeout 3.
I would agree.
The audio and visual experience is just meshed. It's seamless. You can't cut between the two. So the idea of like taking the visual and merging it with a different soundtrack was very strange. I was like, I don't know how this is going to work.
I was extremely worried the entire time that I was like treading on holy ground.
Yeah.
And part of that is like every time I listen to the actual R4 soundtrack, I'm just like, it's at once incredibly inspiring in ways that few other things are, and also incredibly demoralizing because I will never ever be able to make anything on that level or even
as
close
all great
to it.
art is. It's simultaneously inspiring and depressing.
It's like this is the most amazing thing and fills me with a like compulsion to go make things, and also at the same time like it makes me want to give up music forever. And I have to remember that it's like this was a team of incredibly talented people at the top of their game whose full-time job it was to work together on this thing with the people that were making the visual art as well in tandem and just create this tapestry of style and personality for, maybe however long their development cycle was. I imagine it was probably around 2 years, depending on what the overlap was with like the Rage Racer team or however Namco had things structured back then. I have no idea. So I kind of like internalized that and let myself just be like, okay, it's okay if I'm never ever going to reach anything, resembling this level of amazingness.
It's okay.
Like, that's totally fine.
It's okay if you don't produce something with, X amount of development staff and late 90s Japanese video game developer money. It's okay. It's okay. And that's never a reason not to try anything, because the result is still, fantastic. And it doesn't even matter how it compares to the original, because in the grand scheme of things, because you made it and it's it doesn't sound, and I think this is kind of where I was going, like you can tell it comes from the same, is born out of the same environment, you can tell where the origin is, but it's not derivative in any way. It's a continuation. And I think for me anyway, as I think about this is completely treading into unrelated the racing game field, but as I think about Weezer's cover album that just came out,
oh no,
the line that I think artists have to walk whenever they want to, act in tribute to something, but without copying it, it just seems very challenging to me as an outsider looking in. I don't think it works so well for Weezer, but I think it worked very well for you. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry, Rivers. Look, man, you know, you've had a long time coming. But no, it's part of that is straight up just because there are a lot of things they were doing that I couldn't figure out how to do. There's a lot of I've talked to some other composers about this, but there's a lot of like very specific like early digital sampling techniques that they were employing that I cannot figure out how to recreate without, you know, a bunch of old gear and that like knowledge of workflow and mindset and access to whatever things that they were sampling and everything. Like I cannot, with what gear I have and with a, you know, MacBook Pro, make a real electric guitar sound the right kind of bad to be good that they do. Like there are things all over that soundtrack where it's just like, okay, this isn't MIDI. You did sample someone playing an actual guitar and you cut it up in a really interesting way, and it should be super cheesy, but it rules.
Yeah.
And I literally do not have the means to do whatever it is that you did. So I kind of tried to lean into that a little bit. So I was like, all right, well, how do I capture the spirit of this stuff without just aping it? Like there's a lot of good like MIDI jazz flutes on that record, and I only let myself use that on one track. And there were definitely some tricks that I leaned into way too hard, like that super dumb old roll and slap bass that I just use constantly because it makes me so happy. It's the worst thing, and I love it.
The slap bass is like, I will say, when you hear it for the first time, it just like hits you sideways. Like I was not expecting that.
It's like, oh, that's too loud. That doesn't even belong here.
But very quickly it just becomes like, nah, I dig it. Like this is all right. You can stay, slap bass.
You can stay, like weird relic from ActRaiser, I guess. Like it sounds way more like that, like generic Super Nintendo slap bass than anything else. Extremely.
I love that you can talk about just how recording processes and gear and everything kind of matters and factors into it, because that's something, I mean, Brendan and I love music. I've listened to music my whole life. I'm not a musician, and anytime I try and talk, like, I'm a writer about technology. The few times in my life I've tried to write about music, it just ends up being, the notes are good. They got a good vibe and a good beat, and I like them. So thank you for lending some credibility to this show where we talk about music with the worst vocabulary possible.
That's all right. I think we did talk about just burning 20 minutes of this podcast talking about early 90s shoegaze, which I am all the way down for.
That'll come in when Time Extend has a Patreon and has a second podcast to unlock. That will be it. It'll be about shoegaze.
Yes, perfect. And I feel like I'll just be pulling from Brand a lot of that anyway. It was all from his area.
All from his neck of the woods, definitely.
I feel like I was trying to answer an actual question and just went wildly off topic.
No, I think you...
Several times now.
I think you got it perfectly. I mean, there was a point as I was, trying to think about, having you on the show and the conversations we would have and stuff like that. I was like, is this record a tribute? Is it a continuation? Or is it an effort to get Namco's attention? And today I discovered it's all three of them, but it's definitely the last one.
In my heart, it's the last one. Realistically, there's a reason I didn't tag them in it, which is that I don't want to get like, I doubt I could be sued for making something that like musically is just a love letter.
Sure.
Although there may or may not have been all those vocal samples from R1 and track 2. Anyway,
look, if you get sued,
the engines sound like they're ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. If you get sued, our theme song is from Ridge Racer 5, so we're also going down in the ship. So.
Yeah, but that's a podcast. I don't know. No one knows how copyright law works. It's impossible.
I have a question, real quick.
Sure.
Because you mentioned
this hole.
The engines sound like they're ready to go. So in
set?
Exactly, in Type 4, there's the announcer, and then sometimes the announcer will say, "Take care of this loser," and it does
that was
not
a really good delivery.
Yeah, I tried. It doesn't sound like the same person. It does not sound like the regular announcer. My theory was that is Enki Gilbert, who runs the Silvaloo team. This is like
as
a
character.
Well, either it's the announcer mimicking him in character, or I think my idea as a kid was he rushes up for some reason. He decides to rush up to the commentary box at the racetrack and steals the mic just so he can scream at his driver and so everyone else can hear it.
That's so good. That's so much better than like I'd always just had a passive assumption that it was just like a weirdly different take or something, but that's 1,000 times better, and I will never be able to unsee that. Oh man.
It's the only way I can
between that and my grandma drives faster than that.
My grandma drives faster than that. It going. Yeah, it's so great. I love that, and I love the I guess it's Reiko Nagase technically in Rage Racer, who's the announcer
that's
in
what I was
that game.
gonna say, because I've heard people say that that's Reiko, and I refuse to let myself believe that that is the case.
Well, I guess because she is in the intro, and that was where they really like made. I mean, I guess technically she was like the race queen or whatever of the first Ridge Racer, but you really didn't see her in CG until Rage Racer. So I just thought it would make sense, but that's my assumption.
I mean, you're probably right. I just don't want to believe you.
I'm not sure why, but hey, you do you, man.
I don't know. It just seems so weird. Like, I don't know, to think of her like talking at all, but also just like the really weird way that they like the way that they tried to add the 90s tood into Rage Racer. Like, I can't imagine, like, okay, it's not like they've ever given us a ton of like character building for Reiko Nagase, but I can't imagine her like stepping up to a megaphone at the beginning of a race, just be like, let's get it on. Like, that don't truck in my head.
You shattered that record. I love it, actually. I love her voice, whoever it is. And I also, you know, I love the acid jazz of Ridge Racer Type 4, but I also love grunge. So I like that, you know, Rage Racer is like...
Rage Racer is incredible. I don't even know, like, the first step of how to start recreating some of that stuff.
I love that, just like the bastard stepchild of Ridge Racer, totally. Where it's just like the little like evil fucking twerp that just like has attitude, just like fucking take your, I don't know, lunch money. I don't fucking know.
It's
but
the Buy Me Bone Storm or go to hell. It's
yeah, it's a Bone Storm, definitely, of the Ridge Racer family. I love it. I love that.
Yeah,
I
totally.
mean, the thing about the music in that game that I think is, it's very similar to me to if you ever played the first Gran Turismo, the very first Gran Turismo, where it's like clearly they had like 5 samples and they just used the same samples for every single song in slightly different ways because there's a lot of repetition, but it's all good.
Yeah, no, they do a lot with a little on that for sure. I'm just glad that series didn't go into the like licensed territory in the same ways that Gran Turismo did. I know you guys have talked about this before, but especially the US releases. We don't need Dragula in a Ridge Racer. I'm glad that we did not get that because that did happen to Jet Grind Radio, and that breaks my heart forever.
I like that song. I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm with you in certain contexts. That for whatever reason, that song will forever be burned into my brain with, again, my cousin's PlayStation and a demo disc of Sledstorm.
Yes, that song. So Sledstorm was where I first heard that song.
Yeah,
that song was in everything. It was like, like 1999.
And it was the Wolf Mother's Woman in 2007.
I was just going to say 90s. Wolf Mother. You're reading my mind. Oh, my God. Damn.
Perfect. We are cut from the same stupid cloth, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, that much is definitely clear. Well, I have to point out one thing that I thought was especially cool is the way that Real Racing Roots 2019 starts. And, well, after the intro track, when you get into Helter Skelter, I love that you repurposed that key progression from On Your Way. Like, it's just... It's like that kind of sort of like foundation that like as an R4 fan you hear it and it's like it just channels that nostalgia in you, but it's a new song. And I love anytime there are slight callbacks to something, you know, like as a longtime fan of anything, whether it's a video game or music or something like that. definitely don't want to get off topic, but I remember reading this article about a band that we both like called Swerve Driver, and how like the guy in that band, Adam Franklin, was like, oh yeah, we use basically the same chord progression in like 5 different songs, and here's where we hit it every single time. And I'm like, that's really cool, because now I'm gonna go hunting around all those songs to see how you did it. So yeah,
where's your Wilhelm scream of chord progressions?
Exactly, except it's like, you know, the Wilhelm scream is like, hey, that's a guy screaming. This is like, hey, that's like a melody that I really like. So, yeah, I really dug that. I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah, that was a weird thing where I was just like, they're different chords, and it's because I didn't listen to it and try to figure it out. I was just like, just sit there, Logic open in front of me and a keyboard, just like, what sounds like jazzy chords like that that I can just do back and forth. And I picked 2 different pairs, so like it starts out with going those 2 chords like up and down, and then later on it switches to 2 different ones that are going down and up, and then at the very end in the outro they just kind of pass back and forth.
The outro is great. Like, just the way that track builds is fantastic. Yeah, well, again, really great listen, and yeah, I'm not trying to shut the podcast down at this point, but like that's definitely, like, that's essentially what we wanted you on the show for, and I wish Brendan could have been here, but he's gonna be, just like all of the listeners who are hearing this right now, he's gonna be one of you. So yeah, I don't know, do something with that information. Anyway,
good one.
So, yeah. So, I was just randomly just thinking. So, I feel like with R4 and Wipeout, teams, are very important to the world and everything. So,
yeah.
What's your team? What's your team and what's your car?
Oh man, for R4 specifically, hold on, let me just like try to fill time while I pull up this Famitsu R4 guide on the table next to me and flip through here, trying to like look at things and figure out how to actually answer that question.
I mean, it's not a big deal.
No, this just became the single biggest deal.
All right.
Oh crap! This is all in Japanese. I have no idea what any of this says. This has gone horribly wrong.
I'm retreating from this question. It's okay.
No, that's fine. I don't know. I mean, the teams basically just determine like difficulty. I mean, obviously they all have different little storylines and everything, but like the game's not hard. So like,
yeah, I mean, just like what colors do you like? I guess basically is where. I mean, I'll say for myself anyway. I always liked Soul Blue, like the gray and blue team. But I think that's because growing up I liked Ferrari, and it's like they're Italian, so they're Ferrari. They don't have a red car, but they may as well be the same thing. I mean, he's basically Enzo Ferrari. That's the whole idea. So,
you can tell that from Enki.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I usually go with Pac Racing Club. Not at all Pac-Man. Just because, like, for whatever reason, canonically in my head, that red and yellow combo is like the R4 color scheme, even though that red doesn't show up anywhere else in the game. Like, I've played through all of them a whole bunch, but yeah.
Yeah, they're really pretty.
And then obviously drift over grip. I'll play with grip sometimes to like switch it up because it does feel weird and different, and it's kind of like playing that game like not anew, but it keeps things fresh a little bit because there's only so much you can do with a game that's now almost 21 years old.
Yeah, I'm never as fast with the grip, and drift is just more fun.
No, me neither. I feel like most of those tracks are designed to throw the back end of those cars around the corner with reckless abandon, except shooting hoops, which is like, I don't think you ever have to touch the brake on that track if you're getting your lines right.
Yeah, the insistence on putting ovals in Ridge Racer games is one of the most confusing things.
It's real weird.
It's like, not necessary. Like, that's not why I'm playing this
It's
game.
supposed to be like the last level. Like, if you don't change the music, it's this big dramatic thing where like they bring in. Oh crap! I'm blanking on her name again now.
Kamara Lovelace.
Yes, thank you. They bring her back in, and like she's doing some work on that track, and there's fireworks everywhere, and like the camera's super dramatic. But you kind of just hold down gas and go. And
pretty much, yeah.
And then you win. Like, I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but like I kind of just feel bad. They do start you off really far behind the first car though, so it does like there is a climb.
Yeah.
And it's what is it, like 8 laps, 12 laps, something like that. I've only played it like 3,000 times. I should probably know by now.
It's 6 or 8, yeah.
Basically 100 if you round up like a little bit.
Basically 100. It may as well be 100.
Yeah. As for Wipeout, Faizar all the way. I don't even have a good reason. Just
yeah. Well, I was gonna, Wipeout is when we have a Wipeout show, we're definitely having you back on for that. Faizar is probably my team too. I would say. I mean, I think I just like the blue and yellow combination.
Yeah, that's the main bit. Yeah, I do like what Ian did with the AG Systems logo in like XL/2097 and 3 as well. So, I don't know. I'll mess with some AG Systems now and then. I ain't above it.
Yeah, no, I mean, AG Systems is great. I mean, pretty much every team in Wipeout 3 in that era of the FX20, whatever it is, Racing League, that's like the peak. Like, I could drive for any of those teams proudly. They're all great. I mean, I do like how, like, the Piranha logo it's just like a rhombus and a triangle, and that's it.
It's just a bunch of shapes. They're gonna kick your ass and drag you in the parking lot after the race.
It's just
have a talking to.
It doesn't take a lot. So I guess then, because I think the last musical question I had for you is with R4 done and dusted, what other racing games, and I know one of these is going to probably just be Wipeout, but you know what, not even racing games. I mean, you've scored a lot of, you were saying you did a lot of different interpretations of series, and I don't know what excites you, what interests you, what might you want to tackle next if you given the choice. I mean, what about that? What if you had to, or if you had the opportunity to work on the series?
Man, yeah. I've thought about Wipeout a lot, and I don't think that I can do that justice because I think because of the largely licensed soundtracks. Obviously, they used I'm blanking on the name of that DJ that they used for the U.S. release of
Sasha. Oh no, you're thinking of Tim Wright. You're thinking of Cold
Yes,
Storage.
there we go. Yes, that's it. Because I remember like importing the soundtrack, and I was like, "There's a New Order track on this. This is not in that game. How rad would that be if there was New Order in that game?" And then finding out later, like, "Oh, there definitely is, just not here." But you'd also have to play it at 50 hertz to get that, like the PAL regions, old games problems. Anyway,
what New Order song is it? Out of curiosity, because I actually didn't know that.
It is the Hard Floor remix of Blue Monday, I believe.
Oh, that's actually my favorite version of Blue Monday. That's my favorite Blue Monday, which I know is probably like sacrilege to say, but I just love that.
No, I don't think that's sacrilege at all. There are 1,000 different like club variants of Blue Monday because that song is eternally the hardest club jam of all time. Or not hardest, but like best.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's like my second or third favorite band. If you want to start a separate New Order podcast, I'm also down. I got some cassette tapes here I could share with the class.
Well, you know what? I was playing, and I tweeted about this during last week. I was playing WRC, which I mean, it's just called WRC for PS2, but it's a 2001 WRC game. It was the first one Evolution Studios worked on, and that game has like 3 licensed songs in it, and they only play during replays, and one of them is close. Yeah, it's really weird. And one of them is Close Range by New Order, which is one of the, like, I don't like a whole lot of New Order songs past like the one with the weird multicolored baby on it. That album.
Technique is good, damn it.
Yeah, I love Technique. I'm saying I don't really like anything beyond that.
No, that was me shouting out into the void. Just
okay.
Come at me, internet.
No, technique's great, but yeah. So Close Range was like early 2000 song.
That would explain why I didn't recognize it.
Well, the thing is, if I had to make a list of like the New Order songs that I like, the more recent ones, like past the point where they were really, really good, Close Range would be on it. Like it's a pretty good song. It's all right. Hearing it in WRC, I was like, I completely forgot I was in that game. I actually like played that game when I was a little kid before I knew even who New Order was, and I was like, I liked the song then, and then revisiting it now, I was like, oh shit, that's right, and it's great. So.
Nice.
New Order podcast coming soon.
Now we're talking.
To a Spotify near you, or whatever you use to listen to podcasts.
Wherever fine podcasts are sold.
That's good. I'm gonna use that. That's a good line.
I tried to use that once, and I was like, oh no, people are gonna think we have a Patreon or something. I
No.
But no, to actually answer your question in terms of like what I would want to score next, it's kind of a weird like. The reason this came to be into like a full album anyway is because I was spending several years working full-time and also full-time amount in freelance, and trying to balance like creative projects as well, and I just had no juice left in my veins to give. My adrenal glands were shot. I was burned out really bad for a very long time. So towards the end of this last year, I tried to clear out room in my life to be a healthy, functional person to some extent. And the three things I needed to do were just like stop taking all freelance work, and finish a documentary that I've been working on with, this is not racing games at all, but me and some friends drove down to Portland to talk to people at Fulbright after Tacoma came out. And we shot a little mini doc with them, and they were wonderful. And it took me, very long story short, it took me exactly 365 days before that documentary went out and is on YouTube and got like 100 views and then died. So there's that. And then the other thing that was like a long-term creative project was this record. And in terms of what I would want to do next, because I do feel like I want to do something similar again soon. I have too much of a love for race and jazz to let that go. And there are too many things that I either hear in this record that I think I could do better and have ideas of how to do better, or there are things that I don't hear in this record that I wish I did. Or I wish I had added or found a way to add. Like, there are a lot of ideas that I have just from playing other early 2000s racing games and listening to a lot of like weird, like, you know, different like jungle and drum and bass and acid jazz and stuff from around that era, which largely exists via game soundtracks. But there are a lot of ideas that I had that I want to employ that just wouldn't fit with those songs, but would fit with a similar vibe. So I'm not saying another R4 tribute record, but I definitely I feel a vague compulsion to do something in that vein again, and I don't know what that's going to be. Because before, like, there were some of these tracks before I had made the decision to make this like album a complete thing. There were some of them that started out as rescores for other games. So I don't know if you've followed this at all, but there's a game called Cross Sneak Plus that was kickstarted recently by Max Krieger. That is extremely a like Y2K era puzzle game kind of vibe. It's very like, there's a lot of character of like Mr. Driller and Space Channel 5 and a lot of like old Sega and Namco. Like, it's just dripping with that aesthetic and feel. And talking to him about that and about the soundtrack and stuff, and it kind of inspired me to do, like, I'm trying to remember which one of the tracks on Real Racing Roots 2019 this was, but one of them like started as something that was inspired by what I'd seen of that game, and I was like, I'm gonna make some music that reminds me of Sega GT.
Yeah, I saw you tweet about that once, and I can't remember which one it is, but yeah, it's funny. I hear some tracks on this album do remind me of that sort of Sega GT, Aldo Modelista, and Enthusia vibe. Like, there's definitely, I don't know if you ever played Enthusia. It's a very weird game.
I have heard you talk about it a little bit, and it's on my list for sure.
A lot of people love it, and I mean, it's fine. I guess it's fine. I just don't know why, but a lot of people love it. And I think it's high spec. I think it's the high spec demo that gives me Enthusia car select screen vibes for whatever reason. So.
Oh, was that the one? Forgive me, all the names on these tracks changed 1,000 times. Is that the one that's like super compressed and dirty with like the actual like bass riffs and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is
so
one of the more compressed ones, I think.
Yeah, that. Yeah. Okay. Demo. Yes. So that was actually the first track that I did with the idea of. That was the first one of any of those tracks that I made, and. Was my first attempt at trying to make something in the vein of R4, and it was because of the track Naked Glow, which is like all like live bass and drum samples and stuff, and that song is a whole hell of a lot of fun and probably my favorite track on that soundtrack, maybe.
It's so good. It's up there.
Incredible.
Definitely. Yep.
And I was trying so hard to find a way to make that song work as I was like, especially after coming back to it later, because I'd actually recorded all the bass tracks on a different computer at our old apartment, things set up differently. It was like on a really old iMac as opposed to everything else, just on a newer MacBook, blah blah blah. Anyway, there was just a little bit of recording latency that I could not do anything about, so nothing was lining up the way that it needed to. So I went over and re-recorded so many of those parts over and over and over, and it wasn't even like good enough to warrant the amount of time that I was spending on it. It was just bothering me that it wasn't working. So I was like, kept trying to like manually compensate for the lag by playing ahead of the beat, which is impossible. Yeah, it's like trying to play Parappa on an LCD.
Jeez. It's like I've sunk so much time into this. It has to produce something, damn it.
Right. So I just got to the point where I was like, this is not like, I don't know. It was nowhere near good enough. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to make this lo-fi and just blow the shit out of it and mix it really badly in a way that kind of like, I don't know, has some character to it, I guess. And then just write the word demo at the end of the track and make it a bonus track in Bandcamp. And just, there we go. It's out in the world. I'm not going to worry about it anymore.
Well, you called it high spec, which I think is so clever because Ridge Racer 4 came with the demo disc for the original Ridge Racer, and it's a demo track. So it's just, that's a nice little joke you did there.
That was the one like moment I had where it's like, maybe I can pull it off if I use this stupid pun. And same with the other one, the Pocket Station Rock. It's like the only thing loaded on my Pocket Station is that little Ridge Racer 4 thing. And
I'm going to play that real quick for my own ears so I can remember which one that is.
It's the one that clearly started with an idea that never ever went anywhere.
Yeah, that one's crazy. That one, I love it. It's just
so dumb. I gave up by the end, so I was like, how can I just make these drums sound like they're breaking? Like you just lit the computer on fire. So that's where that went. So I was like, all right, that'll be the other thing that I throw the word demo on, and then just get this thing out the door, or I will spend the rest of my life tweaking it, and it will just be not good. Or worse, I guess.
It's a struggle of the perfectionist, knowing when to stop.
That's the worst part is I'm not even just like, oh, well, it's close, but it could be perfect. I'm just like, this isn't good. And like, that's fine, but it could be slightly less not good. I don't know. I'm probably too deprecating about it. I apologize if that's annoying.
No, I mean,
I've been very bad about that.
I'm pretty self-deprecating too. So, I mean, I
think
people
drag each other both down.
I think people who have listened to Time Extend at least know to expect that from me. Brendan's the one who brings his swagger,
his spirits.
Yeah. His swag. I don't know, whatever. He brings it. Whatever it is, he brings it, and that's why it's not on this show because he's not here.
All apologies. You know what? It'll be that much better when he's back next week. It'll be that much better.
Exactly.
The air will taste that much sweeter.
You can't miss it until it's gone. Well, yeah. So I'm just thinking as I'm going through, and I wanted to play one of the tracks on the album to remind me how it went, and I saw the cover of it again. I know we could spend an hour on this. But
Test Drive Le Mans. Let's talk about it. I'm just kidding, Brendan. That was a joke. Don't kill me.
We've already been here for an hour, and I know you have a life.
You'd be surprised.
So, real quick,
But you probably do. So sure, let's.
I mean, I know at this point it's a Friday night, it's midnight, and I'm recording a podcast. Do I sound like someone who has a life?
Look, if anyone's made it this far, they're here for whatever garbage we are swimming in. So let's just own it.
Right. So, on the cover of this record, there is a this is a JogCon. See, I realized something.
Yes.
So they're the two Namco controllers that they released with different Ridge Racer games. I always pronounce the first one as NegCon. Apparently, it's NegiCon.
Yeah, that's been a hard habit to break because I've always flip-flopped on NegCon or NegCon, which felt wrong, but I said it anyway. Like, I know it's imgur.com, but I've always said imgur because I have brain worms.
And it's a GIF, too. It's not a GIF, it's a GIF. Come on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So many infuriating years of everyone saying that wrong on Idle Thumbs just to bother me. Coming for you, Jake Rockin. What do you... But yes, first of all, hard G. It's not graphical interchange format. I, the guest, will tell you to unsubscribe if you disagree. Wait, don't do that. Please don't do that.
Yeah, we don't have the luxury of asking for that yet. check back maybe in 5 years if we're all still alive.
There you go. That's the spirit.
Yeah. So the JogCon. Now, I never had the luxury of playing any of these games on the weird ass controllers that Namco designed for them, but I've only ever heard great things about the experience. The JogCon definitely seems like the more natural approach of having a wheel that's controlled by your thumb, which I did.
Yeah, we should probably describe these for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so the NegiCon is basically, it's like it doesn't really look like a PlayStation controller, but just for the sake of explaining it, take a PlayStation controller.
It's more like a Super Nintendo controller in a way.
Yeah, Super Nintendo controller with slight, candles to it, and slice it down the middle, and you can basically, like, they twist around each other, so it's almost like, what has those controls? Like, Jets don't have those controls. Something out there has controls where it's like you pivot your one hand or your one of your wrists in a certain direction, the other one in the opposite direction.
But, like, you need to pivot it past where your wrist is, like, naturally able to bend.
Yeah. Anyway, the relative left and right movement of your hands turning both halves of the controller are basically translated into lateral left and right movement in the car when you're driving. So yeah, it almost gives you like sort of like some sort of like spacecraft or weird you're not driving a car at that point. It's like you're piloting some weird machine that doesn't exist in the real world.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of like early 80s like Atari arcade games. They're trying to find kind of more gimmicky controls right before that all crashed.
Also, it has, interestingly, it has 4 face buttons just like the PlayStation controller, but 2 of them are analog.
Yeah, and they stick out like 3/4 of an inch from the surface.
Yeah, that's really strange.
But the surface is divoted in underneath them, so they don't actually stick up much further than... Actually, hold on, let me pull this thing out. Okay. Yeah, they barely stick up past the other 2, but they do, like, there's a lot of clearance between... like the button and the surface of the controller. You have a long travel to push that thing all the way in.
I remember seeing like pictures and things of these controllers like in like kind of inserts inside these games, and they always like, I didn't think much of them at the time, but then at a certain point, I'd look as I probably got older, I'm just like, what the hell is this thing and who owned one? Because I didn't know anybody who had one, and why does it exist? But yeah, so that was a NegiCon, and then the JogCon was totally different. Much more sensible. So, and this is how you do it. If you're not listening to Andrew's record yet, don't look up a picture of a JogCon. Go look at the cover of his record, because that will show you the dial.
Sharp. That was sharp.
Yeah, there you go. Do it. That will show you the dial that is in the... But seriously, look at a picture of a controller. There's this huge-ass dial in the middle of it, and apparently there's a little divot in it for your thumb, and apparently it's force feedback, which is crazy.
Oh, yeah. I think it's powerful, too.
Ooh, I didn't know that until I looked it up like a week ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not know for sure if they even were, either of them were released in the States or not. I feel like that's something that I should know. But as I said earlier, brain worms, convenient excuse that I just made up. So I imported both of these just via eBay from Japanese sellers, and they were both super cheap.
That's
like
good
even
to know.
Today, you can get these things very, very cheaply. Like easily both of them less than $20 a piece. But they're very, very strange. So we should probably start with the Negicon. Like this thing is like the D-pad is kind of a disc shape. Like you were not playing Street Fighter with this thing. The triggers have also like a big travel to them as well. They're very soft, but they're also, I don't know if they actually are analog. I think one of them is analog and the other one is not, if I recall. And I don't remember which one is which is weird. Because that means if you set it to brake and accelerate, that means it's just always, I don't know, it's either on or off in a weird way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can say that the reason why my preferred way to play any PS2 game is actually on my PS3, which is like one of the really backwards compatible
you got
units.
a launch model.
Yeah, I love it. But I absolutely hate the PS2, the DualShock 2, because of those analog buttons. I literally lose all feeling in my thumb playing racing games just so I can accelerate as much as possible.
Yeah, totally. And I still have the same problem with the PS1 controllers as well most of the time. However, I do love them on the DualShock 2 because I am a big Metal Gear Solid fan. That said, they're still barely even usable in that game. MGS2 specifically. Yeah, Negicon is a weird thing. The X or cross, I guess, depending where you are, button and square are 1 and 2, respectively. There's no select button. There's no L2 and R2.
I don't know why they felt the need to change that.
I have no idea. It's super weird. And like you can tell if the game supports it or not because when you plug it in, it will like change the icon and menus from like X to 1 or whatever. And yeah, the turning radius on this is really strange because it's like if you're just to turn one half, you're twisting one half of the controller and holding the other one in place to hit buttons and stuff, or because there's a cable sticking out of it, and depending on how far away you are from your console, you might not be able to like move it that much comfortably. If you're just turning one half at a time, you're moving your whole entire arm and upper body basically to like get around that thing, so you end up kind of having to play them both twisting against each other, which is fine. I will say, even after all this time, I still will like go into a corner and mix up left and right because you're twisting up and down.
Yeah.
And that's probably not an issue if you're not stupid, but it is something that I do all the time. Like I'll be going into like there's a hairpin up a hill on Heaven and Hell in Ridge Racer 4. Right after you come out of that tunnel, and I will like get ready to go into a drift and turn right and just slam hard left into a guardrail and drop from first to eighth immediately.
Oh no.
That has happened multiple times, even recently. But aside from that, when it is working, it's such a it glides so gradually, and there's just a little bit of like spring in it. That always like bumps it back into place. So you're just kind of, it's like you're pushing against it very gently. And it controls like a dream in every game that I've tested it with. And the Negicon is really like, there's a much more broad list of games that it's actually compatible with. Like I think it's all the Wipeouts. It's most racing games in the PS1 and a lot on the PS2 are like fully compatible with the Negicon. Namco or not.
I love that so many of these companies, developers were like, yeah, we'll build
totally
support.
down.
Yeah, we'll build support for your weird ass Frankenstein
for both of the
creation.
People that bought these.
We'll do it.
Totally. And it's great. It the only like other criticism I might even have, if you could call it that, is it almost makes R4 too easy. That game is not exactly notoriously difficult or anything as it is, but like you have so much better control with this than you do with the D-pad, or even with the Joy-Con, to be perfectly honest. That it
Wow,
almost,
that is not
like,
what I
just-
would have expected.
I know, it's really weird. So as long as you remember which way is left and right,
Yeah.
and are not throwing yourself into walls, it just makes that game an absolute breeze. It's great. Highly recommend both of these things for different reasons. But yeah, Negicon is a weird thing that I kind of just picked up because it's a weird thing. It's a weird artifact and like a strange way to play old games, and like, I think that might be my favorite era of racing games, period. Obviously a lot of like sim stuff from back then doesn't at least it holds up in a different way. Like, it's not as realistic or anything, but they have a feel to them. And so I was like, I'm going to play a lot of stuff with this. I should pick one of these up at some point. And yeah, it's been great. It's super weird.
You've definitely piqued my interest because I didn't know, like, I assumed in my head, I was just like, well, the few times I've thought about it, I've thought that there's no way I could probably get a decent one in any sort of anything that would be considered, reasonably priced. So I very quickly talked myself out of it.
No, I got mine like barely used in box, actually, like in the original box and everything, for like $17-18. That's like shipping too. It's
wow.
They're not too bad. Obviously, like, price for everything is relative, but I'm just like, I'd rather be much more upfront. Just be like, no, here's the actual number that I paid for these things, because I feel like it's more helpful than just be like, oh, it's cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it sounds like this is going to go down a lot better than when I tried to play PGR with a Rock Band guitar.
That is an undertaking, and you have my infinite respect for even trying.
I feel like anyone who played any of those games, just like, I'm going to see what I can use this in. And
what else does this do? Yeah,
and,
I had a buddy who was convinced that he could find a way to play through SOCOM 2 with a DDR mat. It didn't go great.
No. I tried to play Halo 3 with the guitar as well, and what I quickly discovered was that I think I could not stop like turning in a circle, just like constantly turning. But if I held the whammy bar in a very specific position, I would stop turning.
Nice.
And that was basically it. Yeah. Well, Andrew, this was an awesome show, and I know I sound like a broken record, but it was really cool having you on, and I want to have you on again to talk about Wipeout, all sorts of our crazy things, and
Test Drive,
absolutely.
The JogCon.
Test Drive. Yeah, you bought a copy of Test Drive Le Mans.
Because of this show.
I'll
have you know, dear listeners, I've listened to all of these episodes, and it is very good.
Yeah, you picked up a copy of Test Drive Le Mans because of this show. A game that I tried to get Brendan to buy for like maybe 3 months before he actually did. So, yeah.
Sounds like PAL copies were a lot more expensive and harder to get based on what he was saying. Because
that's totally true. Yeah, it sounded really expensive over there, which sucks. And he actually got an awesome copy that they sent out for review to critics.
I know.
That's
so rad. I want to know how he found that. It's bananas.
Yeah,
I guess he explained how he found it, but just like I want to experience something like that.
I love that shit like that just
rule.
winds up on eBay. It's really cool. Yeah, it makes me like want to spend even more money I shouldn't be spending, which like isn't good. But that's.
Well, let me tell you, dear listener, if you are in the United States and have a functional Dreamcast, you can get Test Drive Le Mans shipped to your mailbox for a grand total of like $4, and that game is good as hell.
Well, I think the other thing too is that, and this is what I was trying to explain to Brendan, I was like, you don't have to get necessarily the Jesus Christ, the PAL copy, because you can, like, most Dreamcasts can play discs from any region.
It's a Dreamcast. You can just burn a CD.
Yeah, as long as you have a Utopia boot disc or something like that, which I mean, that's a whole nother
I need to get some
road we're going down. But as long as you have that, and your Dreamcast was made before like the 3 months before it went out of production, you can probably play any game. But
yes, if there is a 0 or a 1 inside a square with rounded corners on the bottom of your Dreamcast, you can burn whatever and stick it in there. You didn't hear that from me.
Yeah. One of my to quickly plug myself in a very selfish way before I ask.
It's your show, dude.
Before I ask you to plug yourself, one of my favorite, one of the things stories I'm most proudest of is one of the first ones I wrote for GT Planet, which is just basically exploring Bleemcast and particularly how Bleem related
the Gran Turismo port.
Yeah, particularly how Bleem related to GT2. And just the entire saga of Bleem was a Dreamcast emulator that let you play PS1 games on your Dreamcast, and the entire saga of how Sony tried
and PC before that even.
And PC, yeah, that's true. And the entire saga of how Sony tried to both shut it down and also like how it worked, and the hole that Sega for some reason felt the need to build into their freaking console is just an incredible story. That's also
it's so good.
Very maddening because it's part of the reason that Sega died in some small way.
Sony's solution when they couldn't like figure it out in court or couldn't win them over in court was just buy them and shut them down. It's just like it's this weird. Wait, was that them or was that the previous? That was the Mac emulator that Steve Jobs is showing off. I apologize.
Yeah,
that was not Bleem. That was Game Station. Am I having a stroke?
I just listened to an episode of Retronauts where they talked about it. I cannot remember for a life of me.
They totally did, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah. Retronauts is a Time Extend endorsed podcast.
Yes, I will also happily plug Jeremy Parrish and all of his endeavors and exports.
Yeah.
That man is a gift and a treasure.
Whew, this has been awesome. Andrew, where can people find you? Where can people find the next thing you do? Go crazy.
Wait. I don't know. I'm Andrew Elmore on Twitter, ELMORE. I don't know. I don't really have anything particularly interesting to be plugging at the moment. So just if you want to see bad tweets or someone talk about a lot of old games, that's about all that's there. I don't know. I wish I had something more like, I don't know, that I should probably talk about that album. It's on places where albums are. Yeah. Bandcamp if you feel like helping a brother out. It's also on Spotify, and I guess Apple Music is still around, evidently, from what I'm told. And I just got a confirmation email the other day that it was put on something called Deezer, which I refuse to believe is a real thing, or a service that exists.
Wow.
No, there's nothing called Deezer. That's not a thing that a thing can be called.
I've heard of it. I just didn't know.
You can't just call a thing Deezer. You can't do that.
I just didn't know it was like real. I thought it was just like legend.
It probably is. I'm sure it's on Napster at this point. Winmix, Kazaa, LimeWire, FrostWire if you're feeling fancy.
Sure.
I doubt enough people have found it that it's on a Pirate Bay variant anywhere, but I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, exactly that. Go to
I'm bad at this.
we
steal my record.
Everyone is. Join the club. Steal. That's a great System of a Down album. Yeah, definitely go check out Bandcamp, because I don't know if they're still available, but you have these awesome physical
that's
limited
right.
editions.
I forget about that. Yeah,
of 2019, and they are sick.
Yeah, so my buddy Levi runs a project called Plume Labs, where he finds various artists that are doing cool stuff, and he releases their albums on these little handmade like USB releases, but they come with some like some feelies, as they used to say in the old PC game days. But it's like there's a lot of weird like physical like things that are packed in with them. They come in these cases that are like little like Famicom disk system kind of enclosures. They're beautiful. That dude is a really, really good designer and just generally smart and good person. Anyway, also when you stick the USB drive in your computer, there's all kinds of other fun stuff on there. So I had to throw together like a folder tree of fun, like little digital goodies and art files and other music and stuff that is on there. It takes him a while to get those things manufactured because they are extremely unique and made in small quantities. So it might be a while before it's like ready, but they are available for purchase at the moment. And there's also a lot of other really, really cool artists on there that have done some awesome stuff. He was the first person that I interviewed back when I was doing an interview podcast. Yes, so that is at Plume Labs, PLOOM. I can't talk, PLOOM.
It's a smorgasbord of fun. That's my quote. You've heard it.
Yep, that is the
You
trademark.
heard it here first.
Ship it.
All right, and I'm Adam Ismail. This is Time Extend. Thank you so much for listening.
Brendan, I'm so sorry.
What?
I'm so sorry for everything.
No,
Brendan.
what? Go. You know what? I think that's good. I think